Every leader knows that a thriving organization depends on the energy, productivity, and commitment of its people. But few leaders are able to cultivate the employee engagement and performance needed for this level of success. What's the difference? Positive leadership practices. Welcome to the Positive Leadership Movement Podcast with your host, positive work culture expert, Alex Bratty. Ready to harness the power of positive leadership? Let's dive right in.
Hello and welcome to episode 43 of the Positive Leadership Movement Podcast. I'm your host, Alex Bratty, and I have to tell you right now, up front, just totally honest, you are going to love this episode. And that is 100% because of who we have on today. She is truly one of the top leadership experts and coaches out there, and it is a privilege and a joy to have her on the show. Her name is Adriana Rosales, and let me tell you a little bit about her before we jump into what I promise is going to be a fascinating and highly actionable conversation. So Adriana is the founder of Adriana and Company, a leadership training firm. She is a 7-time author, international speaker, a Forbes Coaches Council member, and Heart Math coach. Her corporate code proprietary leadership method has been translated into Spanish and Mandarin. Her purpose in life is to help inspire, train, and influence the next generation of corporate leadership. Her current focus is the Latinas 100 project. This yearly project helps 100 Latinas become published authors by sharing their personal stories. This project helps elevate the voices of marginalized communities, primarily women, and she is also currently writing and co-authoring a book about AI, artificial intelligence, in which she discusses bridging artificial intelligence with heart intelligence, which we are definitely going to discuss because that just sounds so cool. So welcome, Adriana. It is so wonderful to have you on the show.
Thank you, Alex. I'm excited to be here with you.
Thank you. And I can't wait to dive in. So you probably know, I know you listen to the podcast, and I know the listeners all know I always start with this because, hey, it's the positive leadership movement. So we care here about what everybody thinks positive leadership means. And people have different definitions. So we're curious, what does positive leadership mean to you, Adriana?
Alex, I love that question. It's a great question to start off with. And for me, positive leadership is all about self-awareness and self-regulation, especially self-regulation of emotions. So I love that this quote that Bill Gates has. He said many years ago, leaders of tomorrow will be those that empower others. And that draws back to this a great leader being someone that empowers others. But in order to empower others, as leaders, we have to self-regulate, and we have to understand how our bodies work, how we're connected to our heart and our mind, and how that works. So that is a long explanation. I believe that's what the leader of tomorrow is.
I love that. And you know, while you were talking, the audio got a little distorted. So I'm going to do a little summary of what I think it was, and then tell me where I'm wrong, or you need to fill in the gaps. So you
Absolutely.
talked about self-awareness, and you talked about self-regulation.
Yes.
And I think it was self-regulation in relationship to our emotions. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I love that.
Self-regulating your emotions. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I was saying it's all about self-regulating our emotions, and it's understanding that we don't operate necessarily from the brain as we've been told for the last 50 years, if not more, but we operate from our heart, and that's just a scientific fact.
Yeah. Isn't it the truth? And you know, we talk about self-awareness a lot on this show because truly it is literally ballpark entry to being a leader. I mean, if you don't have self-awareness of, you know, your strengths, your weaknesses, your values, the things that matter to you, I mean, you can't really lead yourself, never mind anybody else. So self-awareness is sort of like leadership 101, right? But I love that you're taking it to the next level in the sense that like the regulation of emotions, and I think especially in the corporate world, sometimes emotions just get shoved to the side, like it's like this woo woo, yeah, whatever thing. And yet they're so powerful. I mean, we cannot ignore them. And as leaders, we have to be so aware of, what is going on emotionally inside us, and how is it coming out, right? Like if we're trying to suppress it, that's okay for a while, but sooner or later it's going to come up and it's going to come out, and probably towards the wrong person in the wrong way, right?
Yes,
So
absolutely.
can you talk a little bit more about this whole notion of emotional regulation, and like how you talk to leaders about that and show them the value of that?
So self-regulation is about emotional management, and some of the top leaders in the country, from Bill Gates, Elon Musk, and John Maxwell, Ray Kurzweiler, Peter Diamandis, all the big leaders in the country right now are in the know. They understand that it's really all about those individuals who are emotionally intelligent. Mm-hmm. And the individuals that score high in emotional intelligence are very, number one, self-aware, but they're not just self-aware, they are taking action on that awareness, which is two different things, because you can be self-aware all you want, but if you don't take action on what you realize in the moment, and you don't adjust, adapt, and become resilient by doing it, then it's pointless to be aware. Right?
Yeah, you're exactly right. It's sort of like you can have all the information and knowledge in the world, but if you don't do something with it, then it's kind of worthless, right?
Exactly.
So it's that same principle.
Yeah, so when I talk about self-regulation, I'm talking about an individual that understands, number one, that we are human beings that operate from the heart out, as opposed to what we've been indoctrinated to believe, which is we operate from the brain, which is one of the biggest myths in the last 100 years. We now know that the heart sends more signals to the brain than the brain does to the heart. There is just so much evidence and research done on how the heart influences everything in your body. So for example, you've got an emotion that you're feeling, your heart feels it first, and then that emotion translates a signal to the brain, and then that brain tells your body what to do.
Yeah.
And there's, of course, 3 brains in your body, right? Where the heart being the primary one, then the brain, and then your gut. We've got these 3 organs in your body that are producing a massive amount of electromagnetic field around your body. But we know that the heart, at the end of the day, is the master controller, and the heart has the biggest electromagnetic field around your body, therefore it has more influence. It has more influence with you and how you maneuver in the world and with others than any other organ in the body. So.
Yeah.
I just think that's cool science.
It is. It's super cool science. And I was just about to say that I'm so, my whole perspective on all of this is that it be evidence-based, right? Like all that we share on this show, it's backed up by research. It's not crazy woo-woo stuff that's never been tried or tested. And so, when you're able to talk about emotions in this way and provide the evidence, boy, does it really bolster the case, right? So that these leaders, and this is why when you said, the key leaders in the world are now totally tuned into this. Why? Because of the science.
Yes.
And that's how we have to approach it, is like, this is not just something to ignore. This is real science. It's hard data. And when people actually stop to think about it, they then realize in their own experience that, it's true. Because so many of us are walking around, disconnected and basically operating from the neck up. I know I did for many, many years. And usually if you're operating from the neck up, you can be pretty miserable in what you're doing every day. Like you're doing all the things that convention says you should do, like go to the next level in your career, do this, get that degree, like check all these boxes because, that's what success looks like. And this is what it means to be a leader. But when you come home at night and, you go to bed at night, you find yourself pretty darn miserable because you're not following what your heart really would like you to be doing. And that's what it means to be disconnected, right? Is like when we have that space between our heart and our head. So I love the work that you do, because you're effectively teaching people how to reconnect these pieces, right? That physically they're connected, but somehow in our society, particularly Western society, we've managed to somehow, mentally disconnect them and decide that they're separate, and they're not. They're completely connected.
Yes. And you think about it, when the first research came out was in 1990 with Dr. Amor. And he said, even back then, he was going out and doing seminars and teaching this stuff. And it's not until now, many, 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 many years later, that we're talking about it finally. And that, I found out about heart math, I think it was almost about 8 years ago. And with the work that I do, because I do a lot of the heart math science stuff based on my certification. And I was like, how come I didn't know about this? I've never read a book about it or anything. It was almost like underground, but I believe that we're living in a time now where people are so open. They want to understand so much more. And a lot of people are realizing that operating from the neck up, as you say, it's not sustainable. It's absolutely not sustainable. And I love what I do, because I do allow people to find a way, or give them space to have that conversation with themselves about what it takes to go take that longest journey, right, from the head to the heart. And we all grow. I mean, we when we were all children, we were operating from the heart and from emotion, and somehow we've lost that. And as technology advances, and as AI takes over our lives in a lot of different ways, we're going to need to remember who we are. We're going to need to remember this intelligent heart. And we, as a species, need to educate ourselves about what we've always known to be true, which is we're human beings that do a lot better in the world when we operate from the heart. And that's something that we've forgotten, that we must relearn and reteach. And, my hope for the world is that I get to, teach this stuff, because I remember I tapped in 8 years ago and said, oh my God, I found myself again, and hey, I want to teach others how to do that as well.
Yeah, I love it. And I mean, this wasn't in your bio, but I just want to throw it out there, because I think it's so important in terms of like where you're coming from and your experience. I mean, you were in the Air Force for many years, right? So you served, right?
I was. And you know what the funny thing, Alex, is that I actually worked for Space Command. So I monitored satellites, and I was all things space. I wore the amazing blue jumpsuit that the astronauts wear. I loved my military career, and I have no idea why I never bring it up, but I learned a lot of my science through the Air Force. And I ended up leaving the military because the military is not for everybody. I did my term, and was honorably discharged, and then I moved on with my life, because in the military you do have to be very headstrong. And I found myself losing my heart. I was becoming this really hard woman, and was very to the T, very square. And I said, I don't want to be this, because that's not who I wanted to be. We all get to choose who we want to be. And I just felt my life getting colder and colder. Now I love my military career. I'm really grateful to the United States Air Force. But at the same time, I needed to get out in order to feel my heart again. And, I'm sure that there's plenty of military personnel that can do it while in the military, but I was not able to do it while I was in the military. I had an incredibly stressful career, and I loved it. And, I was a young kid. I wanted to explore other options, but I love my career.
Yeah. And like any career, I mean, it has molded and shaped who you are today. So we always have to be grateful for our experiences, whether they were bad or good, they've helped shape who we've become. But I think that it sort of speaks volumes about how it helped you realize that you had that disconnection. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I know that, the military is starting to catch on to some of this, because they're starting to realize, mental resilience is important as physical resilience. And so hopefully they will get to the point where they realize emotional resilience is as important as mental resilience is as important as physical resilience.
Yeah.
So, you know, it does take time, and sometimes it is kind of mind-boggling in terms of like, why is this stuff not out there? But that is your role in the world right now, to put it out there. So tell us about the new book you're working on, because it's related to what we've just been talking about. You know, it's this idea of heart intelligence, and it almost takes it a step further. I mean, we're talking about, as human beings, having a disconnection between head and heart, but then you bring along artificial intelligence, right? The robots. And now it's like, what's our space now? Do we try to just be in our head and sort of compete with robots? Or, you know, the heart maybe becomes more important? Like, tell us about what you're looking at in that book, and like how those things can be connected, and what it means for leaders in, you know, as AI becomes more and more prevalent in our lives.
Absolutely. So I had this idea a year ago, and I knew that I didn't want to write it alone. I wanted to bring 2 additional colleagues, friends, great writers, authors, and they are also writing it with me. And the title of the book is AI plus HI equals CI. So artificial intelligence plus human intelligence equals collective intelligence. What all business leaders need to know. And the reason for that title is because right now there's a lot of fear around what AI may or may not bring to the table. And there's all different types of AI, as you know. I mean, that's a completely different podcast. But this idea that AI is going to take over our lives and is going to dominate, and then we're going to, quote unquote, create these other like humanoid type of robots. And that's really a myth. You know, if you once the book is released in December, you would definitely want to get it, because we go into the details. But the goal of the book is to set a calm and to clarify a lot of what AI will do for us, and shift our mindset from something that is going to take over our lives and is going to dominate to a tool that we're going to use. So we're going to, in that sense, it's like the collective piece of it is human intelligence, and AI is a collective effort. And we will use AI for what it is, a machine, and machines and systems and programs and softwares, right? In a strategy to get to our goal. I don't believe that we're ever going to lose our ability to have that choice to dictate what AI does. So, you know, in the book we go into the details, but at the end of the day, it's all about collective intelligence, and that's what we go into. And then also to talk about something that AI, I believe, based on what we've researched, is will not be able to be conscious at a level that we're conscious. You know, because at the end of the day, it's all about the caliber of questions that we ask. And a computer doesn't ask questions. We ask the questions.
Right.
So
GEICO, garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah. So we go into this space of bridging this fear that people may have about AI, and how when we recognize our humanity, when we recognize our ability to love and to be loved, our ability to, that just gave me chills, our ability to engage with our heart in an emotional, intentional way, then that is what makes us superior than AI will ever be. I don't believe that there's ever going to be this point where AI can love and be loved. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Maybe as much as a teenager loves their computer, right? But there's not. So I'm just really, really excited about this book. I had no idea that I would be so giddy about writing about this particular subject. But you know, who knew? This is definitely what I'm going to be writing, and what I'm writing about now, what I'm blogging about now, and I just love the topic, because there will be a point in time in the next 6 to 12 months where life will be completely different. It will not be what we think it is, because of the exponential growth in technology.
Yeah.
So we have to be ready. We have to be ready emotionally, mentally, physically. And the more that we become aware of our humanity, of our humanness, the more prepared we will be to engage with robots and AI technologies.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And like, there's so much to that onion that I want to peel back, but just like two specific points that I just love to unpack. I mean, one is, I mean, you're effectively helping shift people's mindset around AI from a place of fear, because most people are, they're like, oh my God, like we're all going to be out of jobs. The robots are taking over. I mean, that's sort of, you know, the knee-jerk reaction, but you're helping to shift that to say, hey, people, no fear. We can leverage this. This is a good thing for us. So we need to ask ourselves, okay, in what ways can this help us? In what ways can we, you know, create opportunities from this? And the second piece is, you know, almost looking at it in terms of, you know, that idea of positive leadership is one of the things that's embedded in it, is looking for what is good. What are the strengths in a person? You know, how can we take the things that we're really good at and first of all, recognize them. And then second of all, optimize them. And AI almost forces us, as you said, as a species, to realize our strengths as humans. And guess what that is? That we have beating hearts, right? We have those emotions. You know, I'm sure some scientists would debate till the cows come home whether we are ultimately have greater brains than AI will ultimately have. And, you know, that will be a debate that continues, but there's never going to be AI that has a heart. And so it almost comes full circle back to what you were saying at the beginning, that our intelligence, our advantage as humans, as leaders, is that heart intelligence, as you call it.
Yeah, and not just a beating heart, but our human heart has that electromagnetic field around it. So it's kind of like a toroidal field, right? And it's been measured. And we know our instruments right now can only measure up to 3 to 5 feet, but it's probably way more than that. And in that field carries information. Okay, just I want you to think about this. This is scientifically proven. That field has information. So the question here is, you mean to tell me that when we create a robot, that we would design a beating heart in a robot that would create that electromagnetic field, and that field will have information?
Right.
That just sounds so futuristic. I don't want to say that it's not possible. We're so not even there yet. Like maybe 1,000 years from now. I mean, we're so,
to your point,
or ever. I mean, there's so many, I can't even fathom that. And perhaps, you know, that's another thing we go into in the book, is that we as human beings, we're linear thinkers. We think in a 1, 2, 3 step. And with technology is growing exponentially, and our brains are not designed to think exponential. And I believe that that's a really amazing way that we're designed. The reason why we're designed to only see one day at a time, maybe, you know, we can see maybe 2 or 3 years ahead and really be involved visually in with our imagination. But we're linear thinkers because the intention behind the human body is to be in the moment, is to be in fully self-aware in the moment, and to be fully self-expressed in that moment. And that's why we're linear thinkers. That's why our design, whoever designed us that way. Now, exponential technology doesn't allow for us to even grasp that. That's why when I say, hey, is this robot going to have this heart? I mean, it's like we can't even think about it because we don't, as human beings, think that way. And there's a lot to be said about this way of understanding how we think as human beings, and how robots and how AI will understand information.
Yeah, I love it. So speaking to the leaders out there, right? Because that's basically the majority of the audience here. I mean, what can give a leader an edge right now when looking at all these things coming at him or her, right? Whether it's, you know, what we're dealing with right now, coronavirus, whether it's the coming onset of AI, you know, I mean, no matter what, there's going to be these challenges. There's going to be changes coming at us. We know that the only constant is change, right? So what is that? Because I know you talk about this, like having that edge. What can give leaders the edge with all of this exponential change happening around them?
Yeah, so the edge for any leader is always going to be how they self-regulate their emotions. I mean, at the end of the day, it's about that. It's about, sitting down and having some type of practice, some type of ritual. For me, it's meditation and breathing. For some people, it's church. For some people, it's, community service. For some people is, a bunch of different things. But understanding that you have to have some type of practice that allows you to be able to connect to the heart and to be able to say, I'm not feeling good today. I'm not feeling well today, or I'm feeling great. I'm up to speed. And being tuned in and really self-aware to the degree where you can say, today I will have an impact in the world, and it will be a positive impact. And for a leader to be able to have that ability is the edge. Because if you think about it, look at the leaders that you see right now, especially on your traditional media and stuff, right? I mean, you look at these primarily men. I mean, it's like they're falling apart. They don't know what to say on camera. They don't know what they're doing. It's just like this huge disaster, right? And all I see from an outsider looking in is, oh, that person is really not self-regulating, because if they knew how to self-regulate, they would have never done that interview on TV, or they would have never, and as a positive leader, we have to be really key and on point, because we do two things with our words. We either give life or we take it.
Oh,
that's how so powerful we are.
Say that again, because I want everyone to really process that.
So we do two things with our words. We either give life or we take it. And especially for the leaders around the world that have a stage, that have a platform, it's our moral responsibility to empower others, like Bill Gates said 20 years ago, right? And to help people see what's really happening and to be positive about it. Because there's a lot of different ways that I could be negative about AI. Absolutely. There's so much fear involved with that. But as a leader, I'm choosing to say, hey, there's a benefit for all of us. In the way home, I've always said the way home is always going to be our heart, understanding our heart better and understanding how we're so deeply interconnected with the emotions that our heart expresses.
Yeah.
So that's...
Yeah. Can you give us an example of like, in case someone's like, wow, that was profound what she just said, like our words either give life or they take it. Like, can you give us an actual example of that though, to illustrate it and make it a little bit more concrete?
Yeah. So for example, I could say, right now, Ray Kurzweil, one of the leading futurists in the world, has said that by the year in 2029, all of humanity will be interconnected with a chip in our neocortex, right on top of our head. Okay, and this Ray Kurzweil has been making predictions since the 1980s. His predictions have been 86% accurate, and then the other percents he was off by 1 or 2 years. Okay, so the fact that he's saying, one of the renowned, inventors, he's like the Einstein of our day. Okay. And he's saying that we will be connected to online, to the internet, through our neocortex. I believe him. I believe that we will. Okay. And that will bring a lot of questions and a lot of ethical issues.
Oh yeah, that will turn up a lot of stuff.
Yeah. So there's a lot of, like, we don't even have laws for that yet. Like, there's still jobs and careers being invented right now that we can't even think of. Like, they're happening right now as we're evolving. So Ray has said this, it'll probably happen. And when you really think about what that entails, that's incredibly fearful. Like, when I first heard that, I was like, okay, it wasn't just some random person that said this. It's someone who has been able to predict. And I'm not talking about anybody who's like people that are predicting nonsense. He is doing math on this stuff, right? He's looking at exponential growth in technology, and he's saying this is going to happen whether you like it or not. Jump on board because you don't want to be left behind. Okay? That fear versus what we are doing with our book is asking the same questions and saying, hey, by the way, this can be a collective effort. By the way, let's lead the way, let's lead people, and let's lead them in a positive way. And one, as you know, one of my mentors is John Maxwell, and I love his quote where he says, people know the way, go the way, and lead the way. Like, they show the way. And that's what we're doing. When you're a writer, when you're a speaker, that's what we're doing. We're leaving our dent in the universe. We're saying, hey, come this way. You can go the way of, you know, the naysayers, like, oh my God, you know, when we get this chip connected in 2029 to our neocortex, you know, the world's going to fall apart. Or we can say, hey, we can leverage it. We can use it to our advantage. We can use it to maybe create more business, maybe create better communities, maybe, you know, stop you know, hunger, maybe stop human trafficking, all of these things. And that's, as a leader, that's what we're choosing to write about. That's what we're choosing to blog about. That's what we're choosing to do podcasts about, because people are watching, people are listening. Yeah. So we're leading in a positive way.
I love it. By the way, I just want to say for the record that at least 15 years ago, I was lobbying for being like connected from my brain to the internet. Now, I am not smart enough to ever have figured out how to do that. There are much smarter people out there than me, but I am actually glad to hear that they're working on that, because it's been like a desire of mine for long. I mean, think how much time and energy it would save us if we could just like access the information without having to do pretty much anything except activate something in our brain.
Yeah, 2029. That's when he's predicting that will happen. And
9 years, I'm in.
Yeah, so it'll be here, and then that in itself brings, you know, new careers, new jobs for people, new ideas, new ways, new philosophies of how we can live life. Because then we are digging really deep, right? We're not just thinking about, oh, you know, my life is going to change because I got a new job. No, your philosophy about life will change. For example, the philosophy of that has been the case for the last 200 years, right? The philosophy, especially here in the West, is, you know, buy the big house, go to the Ivy League school, get all the stuff, get all the nice cars, you know, that is dead. That is over. You talk to young people nowadays, they want to get tiny houses, they want to buy property so they can be self-sustaining. You know, there's a new wave, and I love it because it is a new way of being, a new way of living life. And when we live more sustainable lives, then guess what? The rest of the world also gets to operate that way, because, you know, we waste less, we use less resources, and then the third world countries can also reap those benefits as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So share with us a little, if you would, you know, because if we have leaders listening and they're still with us, and they're, you know, coming along with the self-regulation and the importance of emotions, but what if they really aren't quite sure, like, okay, I intellectually in my head, I understand what it means to self-regulate my emotions, but in my heart, and if I do sit in meditation or I do breathe, and then these emotions come up, and sometimes, you know, not pleasant emotions come up, right? All emotions there's no good or bad emotions. They all serve a purpose, but the unpleasant ones can be more challenging. So like, what do you say to leaders who are maybe just trying to, you know, get their arms around this and understand, okay, what do I actually do to self-regulate? I mean, I understand it intellectually, I'm in my head still, but how can I begin that process to really own those emotions and self-regulate?
Wow, that's a powerful question. I can only speak from personal experience, but another reason why I got out of the United States Air Force was because I found myself only being in my head. It was all data. It was amazing. I mean, what could a young kid in her 20s want, right, than work for the United States Air Force? It was pretty cool. Yeah, you know, I was working with like Lockheed Martin and NASA and doing all these cool things. But I found myself only in my head, and I said, I don't want to live like this. I don't feel anything. I became like this cold person, right? So in order for me to, I say snap out of it. There's probably a better terminology for that, but I needed to snap out of it. I left, and then I began my journey to rediscover this emotional place called my heart, right? And in order to do that, what I found was that I needed to get a mentor, that I needed to find someone who was already doing it and learn from them. So everybody has teachers, you know, it doesn't have to be someone that you pay, but somebody that you know. And I was really fortunate, you know, initially when I left the military and I began this journey of going back to feeling my heart again and getting out of my head, I did it by myself, and, I was a churchgoer, and, I did those things that society told me I needed to do. And then 8 years ago, someone handed me a book. It was a Greg Braden book called The Spontaneous Healing of Belief. And that book changed my life. That person who gave it to me opened a door. And I remember that after that book, I was never the same, that I had opened up this gateway, if you will, to my ability to feel again. And it was all because someone handed me a book. Now, I believe that people give you books because you're ready to engage in that content. I don't recommend that anybody read that book unless you're really ready to be moved and shaken. But I remember I was never the same. And what happened to me was that I learned to just sit quietly under a tree and allow for whatever thoughts, emotions came, and not judge them. And that was the biggest thing. Like, I can save you $100,000 worth of coaching and tell you, yes.
Right here, right now, listen up. Okay,
like $100,000.
Listen up right now, because you're about to get 100 grand's worth of wisdom. Okay, go for it, Adriana.
It is all about not judging the thoughts. Don't judge your thoughts. Just leave your thoughts alone. Just be aware that they're there. They're like, oh, isn't that interesting? I'm thinking about, what a traffic day I'm having, or whatever the issue is, right? And then not judging that and just sitting with it. And as soon as you decide not to judge it, it just magically dissipates. It no longer carries that weight in your energy field. And which is hilarious, because it is not just a something that you say, it's something that can be proven, like with all these really cool machines nowadays. Like, for example, the BioWell that was invented by this really cool Russian scientist, right? And he's got this little antenna that is called Sputnik. And this is the equipment that they use. For example, Joe Dispenza uses in his meditation seminars, where he has 2,000 or 3,000 people, and he will measure the energy in that room through this little BioWell device with the Sputnik antenna. And he's able to, when he gets people to meditate, he's able to read, all of the energy in the room. And that's like fascinating. So what I'm saying is not just to say it or old wisdom. It can all be scientifically proven.
Yeah.
Which I laugh about, because so many people are like, oh, that's just soft stuff. That's just hard, a lot of touchy-feely things. But guess what? The touchy-feely things are the things that are going to keep us alive and well and keep us more human than any AI machine will ever.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Okay, I could talk to you about all of this forever. I mean, and this always happens, because anytime we chat, it just, it takes on a life of its own. But I have to be mindful of your time and the show. And so to kind of wrap this up, because you have shared so many fascinating concepts today and just brought in so many different pieces. I mean, tell us, what are you reading these days? Because you're obviously out there on the cutting edge, reading, looking at the research. Like, tell us what's on your bookshelf these days, so we can all get a peek and maybe start to be as smart and as plugged in as you are, Adriana.
Well, right now I'm reading Dr. Carolyn Leaf's book, and it's Think, Learn, and Succeed. And she's a scientist, and I love her take on how she uncovers or unwraps all of the neuroscience myths and what people have believed for many, many years about how the brain works and all that cool stuff. And then she like decodes it, and she's just brilliant. And one of the reasons why I'm reading her is because when I looked at my bookshelf the last year, I realized that I was only reading men. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I was only reading white men. And I also found that interesting, right? And I have to be vocal about that, because in my own attempt to empower women in general, and then to even more so empower Latina women who rarely get published anywhere, I realized that, I needed to walk my talk. And my goal was to continue to just, right now, only buying women authors.
I like it. Yeah, you need to consume what you're putting out there, right? Consume your own product, as it were.
Who knows? If you look at your bookshelf, Alex, what would you say? I mean,
I don't even need to look at it. I know when you were saying that, in my head, I was thinking, Yeah, my bookshelf's probably the same. Like if I were to just literally take the inventory, I'm pretty sure it would be predominantly male and
Yeah.
probably predominantly white male. Yeah.
And all my coaches, like the coaches that I paid like high dollar for, I mean, I'm talking like all my executive coaching and, you know, my personal coaches, they're all men. And I'm like, why would I do that to myself? I mean, no offense against men. I love, you know, the male species, but at the same time, I'm like, what's going on here?
Right.
Why?
If we're gonna, as women, if we want to lift each other up, we actually got to lift each other up.
Exactly.
I love it. So say the author's name again.
Oh, Dr. Carolyn Leaf.
Dr. Carolyn Leaf. Think,
yes,
Learn,
Dr.
Succeed. I love it. I'm going to check it out. That sounds fat. I love a good neuroscience book. I got to tell you, I mean, anybody who listens to this show knows that I am at my heart, at my core, a total nerd. So I will be checking that out.
You'll love her. Oh my God, you'll love her. Like she has so much content online too. Like you can watch all of her YouTube videos and stuff. I mean, she's just brilliant. The woman is so brilliant.
Fantastic. I love it. Adriana, thank you so much for sharing. Gosh, I mean, this is like an episode people are going to have to listen to more than once because there's just so much in it. It's jam-packed full of, you know, cutting edge knowledge. You gave us actionable information about how to really self-regulate, how to go about that process. And also just, you know, giving us so much food for thought about what our future looks like and how do we as leaders want to show up in it? Like, how do we want to think about it? How do we want to engage with it? And what does that mean for both us and the people we lead? So amazing, amazing. Thank you. I know that our listeners are going to want so much more of you. So tell us, how can they connect with you further? How can they get in touch with you? And also, I think you have a cool complimentary offer to share with them too, right?
Yeah, so people can reach me at adriana.company, just like that. I don't do .com, it's just adriana.company. And when you check out the site, you'll also see a free chapter of my book, Corporate Code. It's been translated to 3 languages right now. And it's the, you know, the basics of Adriana and my proprietary system that I use to train coaches and executives on the 4 pillars of great leadership. And you can have a free couple of copies, a couple of chapters for free. If you like it, you can go on Amazon, and all my work is on Amazon as well. I appreciate it, Alex. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. I am so grateful to have had you on the show, and I know our listeners are too. So that's it for this week. Thank you all for joining us for another episode. If you have positive leadership stories to share, or if you have questions about this week's topic, just shoot me an email at questions@positiveleadershipmovement.com. I always love to hear from you and hear what's going on in your world. And as always, I want to thank each and every one of you for being part of the positive leadership movement and for inspiring me to do what I do every single day.
Make sure you subscribe to the show. If you like this episode, please rate and review. If you want to get more from Alex, check out Happiness at Work, where she provides leaders with a proven path to cultivate a positive work culture that increases performance, productivity, and profitability. Go to happinessatworknow.com. Join us next week and harness the power of positive leadership for your organization.